Hello, everyone. My name is Travis Whitaker, and this is a case study analysis for my class Advanced Project Management at National American University. This specific one is about managing crisis in projects, and it's about the Tylenol poisonings that happened in the 1980s. So some of the stuff we're going to go over, we'll do a crisis overview timeline, just lay out step by step how the crisis unfolded for the Tylenol poisoning. Then we'll look into a crisis life cycle. We'll break down leadership during the crisis, what made up the crisis committee and the sponsor. We'll look at communication strategy, stakeholder management, corporate responsibility by Johnson& Johnson, their response time. We'll look at documentation and record keeping, and then follow it up by lessons learned, and then why Johnson& Johnson was viewed as a victim. So, crisis overview timeline. In September 1982, 7 deaths were linked to cyanide-laced Tylenol. So at the ending of the month, Johnson & Johnson was notified of this, and James Burke, the CEO, actually took charge on this to manage the crisis. By October, he issued a nationwide recall, as well as a lot of public warnings issued. Uh, Through the investigation, they had found that a certain individual had purchased Tylenol, uh, opened the capsules, laced it with cyanide, put the capsules back in the bottle, and returned it to the store. And then other people would purchase it and be poisoned. So between November and December, they introduced triple sealed packaging, and then Tylenol was returned to the shelves. There was a copycat case that took place in February 1986, and there was a second poisoning incident. And this is actually when they withdrawed all capsules permanently, so no one could open up the pills and lace them with something. So, key results: consumer safety was prioritized. There was transparent communication by the CEO James Burke of Johnson & Johnson through the whole process. And then by Christmas time in 1982, 67% of market shares were recovered. So crisis life cycle. So there's 5 different phases. You've got early warning, problem understanding, damage assessment, crisis resolution, and then lessons learned. So the early warning, there was reports of deaths and possible Tylenol connection. So understanding the problem, they determined the source of the contamination. Like I stated earlier, someone was poisoning the capsules. They did a damage assessment and looked at public health and the risk to the business itself. They came up with a resolution. They recalled all the products. They redesigned the packaging with triple seal. Uh, and then they went into lessons learned, how to improve the packaging, and what are the procedures for managing this crisis management in the future. Bottom line, crisis projects occur in hours and days rather than months and years. So on the next slide, I'm going to kind of break out these 5 different phases and talk about them more. So 5 different phases broken out. You had the early warning. There was reports of sudden deaths. Product tampering indicators had been broken. Consumer safety concerns were a top priority, and there was a lot of media inquiries about what Johnson & Johnson was going to do. So problem understanding, they determined the contamination source. They gathered a lot of their facts from the FDA and the FBI. They started investigating manufacturing versus tampering just to make sure nothing in their facilities was causing this poisoning. And then they really confirmed the scope of the crisis. From here, they went into damage assessment. They assessed public health risks, evaluated their reputation impact. They looked at their financial impact as well as the market share impact. From there, they went into crisis resolution, looked at the nationwide recall, did a lot of media communication. They introduced that triple seal packaging, and then they discontinued the capsules in 1986. So, lessons learned: they need to improve their crisis plans, they need to strengthen their stakeholder management, improve risk monitoring, and then really capture best practices for managing crises and projects. So leadership during the crisis. James Burke's actions. James Burke was the CEO. He assumed personal leadership. became the company's spokesperson. He directed crisis response, and he delegated normal operations. So while Burke led, there was the national public safety concern, corporate reputation was at risk, and there was a need for unified decisions, as well as a need for trusted public communication. So there was 9 questions from this case study throughout the rest of the presentation. I'll break down the different questions depending on their areas. So question 1, who should lead a crisis team? And it's really the executive project sponsor or CEO should lead the crisis because they have authority, visibility, and real accountability of the entire process. So crisis committee and sponsor. So crisis committee, that's usually compiled of senior executives. That you've got your legal advisor, operations leaders. These are the people that could hold up manufacturing production if there's an issue with them. You're going to want them in the committee. And then a key part is public relations professionals. You're going to want people that could speak to the media and translate what the team is doing. So the crisis sponsor in this case was James Burke. He served as the sponsor and the project leader. Question number 2, will there be a crisis committee or crisis project sponsor? So both are really necessary. The sponsor provides the leadership while the crisis committee supplies expertise and supports decision making. You're going to want the leader of the committee, and that's usually your crisis sponsor. So a combination of the both is necessary. Next, we've got the communication strategy. Johnson & Johnson's approach, they were completely transparent. There was a lot of frequent updates day by day on how they were managing it. Real cooperation with the media. Every question they had, they made sure to answer it. And they had a real direct communication with the FDA and the public, getting all the information and releasing it as they got it. The results from this had increased public trust. The people understood Johnson & Johnson was trying to do the right thing. There was a lot of positive media coverage, and it really reduced misinformation getting out about it. Question number 3 was how important is effective communication? And so the answer is it's critical. Open and honest communication builds trust. It reduces rumors like the misinformation getting out, and it helps protect public safety. Stakeholder management. So key stakeholders were consumers, employees, government agencies like the FDA or the FBI doing in the investigations. You had stockholders, lenders, and the communities themselves. So Johnson & Johnson prioritized 4 key areas. They wanted to hit consumers, of the product, let them know they were what they did to make them safe. They wanted to protect their employees as well as their communities, and then ultimately the stockholders. So question number 4, how important is stakeholder relation management? So the answer is extremely important because stakeholders have competing interests. Everyone on those key stakeholders list has a different interest in the end product. So managing these relationships effectively really determines the public confidence as well as the long-term recovery by the company. So corporate responsibility, Johnson & Johnson took action. They accepted responsibility for product safety. They recalled products nationwide, took everything off the shelves so they could figure out the cause, and then they cooperated fully with authorities to investigate whether it was something coming from manufacturing or if this was some sort of outside source. I took questions 5 and 7 and answered them here on corporate responsibility because it had to do with that. Should a company immediately assume responsibility? My opinion, the company should immediately assume responsibility, and it protects their consumers and addresses the situation. Even while the investigation's going on and they're trying to figure out the root cause, the company should step forward, take responsibility. Question number 7, how important is showing compassion? I mean, compassion is essential. You had 7 people die. One of them was a 12-year-old kid. You want to connect with the public and let them know how much this hits home and how you're going to solve the issue. And that's what the CEO Burke did. He publicly expressed sympathy for victims and families, helping demonstrate genuine concern rather than focusing on only the company's profits. It was more about the end product for the people rather than protecting company wealth. So response timeline, there was a rapid response actions. They immediately started the investigation. There was public warnings put out. Then they recalled all the products, and then it led ultimately to a packaging redesign. But the results from this response is the market share recovered to 67% by Christmas of 1982. So that was uh, a huge increase from what it could have been, and really it had to do with the response that was put forth. Question number 6, how important is response time? So, response time is crucial. Delays increase damage, reduce trust, and can make a company appear negligent. Where in this case, Burke came out and was very transparent on it, so it didn't look like the company was trying to hide anything. So documentation and record keeping, this is important. Why documentation matters. It supports the legal compliance. It tracks the decisions of what that response team is doing, provides evidence, and helps future crisis planning. Some of the examples would be like FDA communications. You're going to want to document that. The recall actions. What did you do to take all these off the shelf? What did that take? Certain media statements. What did they put out to the public? And then ultimately the investigation records. What came about from the investigation? You're going to want to keep all that documentation. Question number 8 was how important is maintaining a paperwork trail? So it is very important. Accurate records support accountability, legal protection, and shows that the company made informed decisions during the crisis response. So lessons learned, there were some major lessons learned here. Executive involvement is essential. Just showing Burke step in and really take control of the situation. That was huge and very essential to the success of this crisis. Communicate openly. That was evident in what Burke was doing. He openly communicated with the public, let them know what was going on. Prioritize consumers. That's what they did. They didn't look at profits. They looked at making sure they kept their consumer base by solving the issue at hand. They worked with the media. That was huge. They act quickly. Like I stated earlier, it happens in hours and days, not months and years. And then they demonstrated social responsibility. The final question from the case study was how important is capturing lessons learned? So the answer is lessons learned are critical because they involve future crisis response and help prevent similar mistakes. So if you capture those lessons learned, you'll know how to handle these types of situations if they come up in the future. You already have a plan laid out that helps solve the issue. So why was Johnson Johnson viewed as a victim here? It's because their actions, they were transparent. That the public perceived this as very positive. They came out and said what the problem was, what they were going to do to address it. The other one was a fast response. This was positive to the public. They immediately addressed it, took the items off the shelf till they could figure out the problem and then solve it with the new packaging. They prioritized consumer safety first. They recalled those products and then ultimately media cooperation. Every question that was being asked, they wanted to answer it and make sure that the public knew that they were going to solve this issue. So, bottom line here, the public viewed Johnson Johnson as a victim rather than a villain because the company consistently put consumer safety ahead of profits. So, conclusion: there were some key takeaways. Crisis leadership must come from the top. Communication determines public trust. Stakeholder management is vital. Consumer safety must outweigh profitability. Like I said, you want to make sure the product's safe for the consumers before you put profits before that. Rapid action can save both lives and the company's reputation. And that was evident here. It happened in September, and by Christmas time, they had the issue resolved and products back on the shelf. So Johnson Johnson became a model for crisis management because it responded with transparency, compassion, accountability, and speed. And here are my references. Thank you for listening to my presentation. You all have a great day.